Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Travis, Anthony, John and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Hello.
What's up?
Hello, Anthony and Travis.
What's up? Hello.
No beep
I didn't
today.
realise.
Hi. How are we all doing?
Very
Doing
well.
good.
Right, shall we slap out the housekeeping then?
Yeah, give it a good slap, Nate.
Will do. Any signs of curvature, gentlemen?
Nope.
None.
Any signs of axial rotation? Ranty's not here, so I don't need to qualify it.
Absolutely no evidence of axial rotation whatsoever.
Bill Miller? Any signs of Bill Miller?
Don't you mean Brian Mullen? Or
No, Bill Miller.
I wasn't quite sure. Did you abbreviate it? Because I couldn't quite tell whether it was BM Brian Mullen or BM Bill Miller. So no evidence whatsoever of Bill Miller.
Anybody else? No evidence of Bill Miller at all?
Nope.
Fair enough. Any signs of a pressurized system? No, I'm going to rephrase that. Any signs of gas pressure without a container?
Yeah.
Absolutely none. John, have you ever seen anybody blow up a tire with no tire?
Well, you could blow up a tire with a bomb.
With a what?
A bomb.
Yeah, I've seen that
think
done.
John-
They spray, I think it's like lighter fluid into those 4x4s when they come off the rims, and then they literally set it on fire. It goes bang and pops back onto the rim.
Yeah, it's cool.
Right. So it can be done, but it's not the same kind of blowing
Well, it
up.
can't be done without a tire, Arwin.
Yeah, but it's still interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Definitely not
If I ever-
gas pressure without a container, though. I'll agree.
If I ever burst my bead in the Arctic somewhere and I need to put my tire back on, I will remember it.
Should I whisper the next one tentatively? Any signs of
Depends on which-
gravity? Any signs of gravity?
Oh yeah,
No,
science.
that's not how you word it.
Yeah,
Nate.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I take it back. Any
Right, that's
proof?
good.
Any proof of gravity?
Absolutely
Nope.
no proof whatsoever, is there, Arwin?
No, there's no proof.
Way.
Any signs? That was ace. Well done.
Yeah.
lads.
But plenty of signs.
Oh, we're not
Lots
past it
of
yet.
them.
Yeah, but
Lots
no
of them.
proof, and that's the key bit.
Yeah, I had a hangout about it yesterday, and you obviously didn't watch it because you made typical comments you do.
Have you got a cold or have your balls dropped?
No, I recommend you actually watch the entire thing. It'll do you good.
I
Actually,
watched
watching
I
it
don't know why you
without
do.
being able to interrupt it as you're watching it, that would be good for you.
Have you got
Anyway,
a cold? or
let's
have your
move
balls
on.
dropped?
I have.
Do you have a cold, Arwin?
Nope.
You sound all
Yes.
bunged up.
You sound much bassier than you normally do, Arwin. You sound
Yeah,
like
it
you've
does.
aged 20 years.
It's just because I'm a real man now. No.
Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
I
Right.
Have you got a
Any-
different microphone?
nope.
Oh, you do definitely sound different today.
I agree. Right. Let's get the rest of these out of the way. Any
I
signs?
had a
Oh,
late night. Let's just
Say again?
like that. I had a late night. Just I don't know.
Beautiful.
Next one, Nick.
Any signs of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
What a load of nonsense. Anybody that thinks that must be an absolute moron.
Didn't Paul Voigt say he got evidence of that?
I always keep on saying that, yeah, you know what? There may be some lava layer or anything like that, or a giant pocket very deep down leading upwards. I don't know. But yeah, a core is, yeah, that's based on the presupposition of R automatically, that there is a core. And yeah, magnetics has nothing to do with that whatsoever. So yeah, there may be some kind of lava layer, whatever, down there. I'm fascinated to find out how it is down there exactly. How is this divided? How deep does the lava pocket actually go? Does it go very deep, or is it just a pocket? But a core, magnetics, no.
I've watched about 60-70% of the Wakey Wakey documentary that you recommended, Arwin.
Yeah.
It's excellent. Really,
I know.
really good. Highly recommend it. I haven't finished it yet, but I will after the show.
Absolutely,
probably.
I agree. It is fascinating. It even has good responses to counter the no trees concept. Although I am not absolutely disregarding that concept entirely, but it has a very good counter argument for these effects. It is very elaborate. So yeah, I thought you'd like it.
I did. I really enjoyed it, and I especially liked when he smashed No Forests on Flat Earth, because at the time he was quite into it. You know, he didn't necessarily push it, but he certainly talked about it in a positive light at a time where I was dead against it. And you know, you think, okay, obviously we don't see eye to eye on this subject, but then when he summarised it, it's like, okay, so you've taken all of the same opinions that were out in the negative at the time and just gone, this is what debunks it. In other words, he was quite concise in his research and admitted that he was full of fantasy when he came across that theory originally. I was like, great, that's good enough for me. You know, I've got no issue with people, you know, looking into this stuff. Why wouldn't you? Why would I have an issue with anybody looking into anything? There's no issue. My issue comes when people doggedly assert that it's true. That annoys me. I don't think Mark Knight, Wakey Wakey channel, I should really plug him properly. So, Wakey Wakey, Wakiwaki, is Mark Knight's channel. He's got a fairly good subscriber base, sort of 15,000, 16,000, I think, subscribers. But yeah, he's just released a video, and well, maybe about a week ago, I think, actually. I don't know the exact title, but
I'll get you the link, and you can drop it in the Hangout chat.
I will do, yeah. Yeah, I will do. So yes, that's his. It's basically on geology and many facets of that subject, and he goes into great detail, shows a lot of research, which is quite humorous at times. So at the beginning of the video, I bunged it on, and there was a bit that was getting a bit boring, and then you hear Mark Knight pipe up, going, "Don't get bored, pay attention now," which I thought was quite funny. It made me laugh anyway.
I'm gonna post it in Skype.
Okay, I'll grab it from there.
You can see in the Hangout panel chat, right?
I can grab it from Skype and I can transfer it across. No worries.
All right, there it is.
Got
Put
it.
it in Master B.
Got it. So let's just round out the rest of the housekeeping. There's only one left. Any signs of the presupposition itself? Any evidence of Earth-based radius? Any signs of R?
Nope.
It's funny how you asked it. Is there any evidence of the presupposition?
Yeah, you like that.
That's amazing.
Morning, guys.
Hey. How you doing, Jose? Hola.
Excellent. Hola. Continue, guys. Sorry about it.
There's one more missing that you haven't mentioned.
Oh, really? What did I miss out?
You missed the one about how can a vacuum exist against
No,
I did cover that, but I did miss one out. Any evidence for the distance to the sun?
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, let's hang on. No, there's no evidence of the distance of the sun because, according to Jimmy, it was a bloke called Cassini and another guy called Christine Huygens, and back in there was an assumption made on the half of Huygens that Venus was the same side as Earth, and because of that presumption, then we scaled the solar system according to that, and it seems to have stuck. And on that basis, that's where we get all the distances to the sun from. But it relies on the assumption that Venus is the same size as Earth, which itself relies on the assumption that we have a radius of a certain size based on insert relative excuse. But nobody knows the distance. It's like Jaren said on Globebusters on Sunday. Shout out to Jaren. Nobody knows the distance or the size to anything up there. And that's why I've asked, what's his face? No Simon Dan. What is the answer according to science? Because Simon Dan thinks that he's a science guy, and I've been looking for it for ages, and I cannot find who, when, or why, or how they found the distance or the actual size to anything.
What's the term that Jaren uses for the scaling? He did a video about it maybe 10 days ago, and he basically explained that it doesn't matter what length you apply between you and a star, so long as you scale it all the same, it will always work. And I think it was Seventh Day Truth Seeker or whatever he's called. He had a Globebusters mirror. I don't typically watch Globebusters, but in this instance, it played on the autoplay on his channel, so I listened to Jaren and Bob discussing exactly that. And they showed a video of some guys out in the States in the desert, and they were setting it up in very small scale. Now, obviously, compared to what they claim the heliocentric universe is and how massive and immense it is, but they're obviously replicating just the solar system in a desert, and then showing that you get the right scale, and you can get things to parallax or whatever. You can cause eclipses, and they work out the way they're supposed to, so long as it's scaled correctly. But obviously, you can just double the size of that, and obviously the same outcome. You just have to scale it correctly each time.
Yeah, it's like when you scale a picture. You can scale a picture to any size you want if it's got the resolution, and it'll always in proportion. It's the same thing with the solar system. You can base your presupposition of Earth being a sphere and a radius of whatever, and then basing Venus based on that, and then go into the transit of Mars, and then average in the results to then come up with the solar system. But it still relies on two presumptions, none of which can be factually proven. And if they can, Simon Dan is going to come and show it. Anyway, let's move on. There is one more that we need to address.
I could have swore I covered all of them. What's the other one?
No, the one that's Conspiracy Cats has done a video on about yesterday.
Oh yes, Conspiracy Cats, who basically didn't cover entropy in his video, but did claim that based on a particular formula, you can have the energy of a particle getting lower or randomized in every layer. So in other words, it's not to say that if you shake a tray of marbles, I think this was the example he gave, it's not to say that they're all going to travel in the same speed and distance. They're all randomly smashing into each other, therefore travelling at different speeds and different distances and different energies. Therefore, some of the atmosphere is lost to the considerably lower pressure system that is above it. But most of it is being contained by gravity. That's essentially what I took from it. Would you concede that's what he said, or agree, sorry?
No, it started before there. For me, it fell at the first hurdle, literally the first sentence. He started off by his little whiteboard with a formula on it, and it just looked like we were having a lesson with Rumpus. Although this guy sounded as though we were, like he sounded attractive in terms of this isn't going to be as painful as listening to Rumpus. But he introduced us, and I'll put that in quotations mark because that's what he said, to something called the Boltzmann equation.
Say it again. You broke up. Just say the equation name. I didn't know it off the top of my head.
The Boltzmann's equation, or the Boltzmann's factor, Boltz, and then Mann, Boltzmann. And this is like a generic equation that is temperature dependent, and it applies to numerous examples of different things in real world. But the Boltzmann factor is not establishing a causal effect with anything. What it does is, and I'll quote this from I'll read it from a page that I'm reading from now because I don't want to mess this up. It says the Boltzmann factor is an expression which expresses the probability of a state of energy relative to the probability of a state of zero energy. So it gets the probability of a state in one state and compares it to the probability of a state in another state, and you get a pretty graph, right? But it's the probability of. So let's put this into a different context. We've got Sean Hufford that claims that GeoStreber was, when he was having his one-on-one hangout with me, he claims that GeoStreber was not having a conversation with the sound that we heard on the recording actually came from my microphone, and it was soundly that was coming through the speakers through my microphone. Now that's got a probability factor with it. It's a zero. There's a zero probability to that because I never listened to
Anthony,
Soundly.
were you secretly convening with Soundly?
Yeah. Well, and the other side effect is, of course, regardless that I mean the probability of me listening to a Sean Hufford hangout where Soundly speaks in just the right way at the right time that makes it sound like a coherent conversation between him and GeoStreamer, the probability of that is basically zero. But that's the older alternative argument. That's half of the expression. So it's like correlating that half of the expression of the Boltzmann's factor into the probability that it was actually GeoStreamer that was presenting the argument. And it's the correlation between the two. Now, all right, maybe it's not a perfect example. I just wanted to have a bash at Sean Hufford because he claims to be, quote, the audio guy. But Sean absolutely knows with absolute certainty that sound was coming through GeoStreamer's mic. He's lied to all of his subs and he's deceived them all. He satisfies the definition of lie. But in this context, the Boltzmann factor is an expression of a correlation of two probabilities against each other. Now, that's not empirical. It's not factual. It's not even real world.
Can I just ask a
It's
quick question?
That's a good one. I'll remember that.
Does this qualify as a complex hypothesis?
No, it's a correlation.
Well, that's what a complex hypothesis gives you at the end of it.
It's just like Occam's razor, but with a different angle to it. Where Occam's razor, it focuses on the size, the Boltzmann factor focuses mostly on the level of probability. Is that right?
The voice of my son is not coming from Anthony's speakers in real time.
Yeah, it's actually coming through Voyager 1, because it's been pinged out from Earth through a satellite to Voyager 1, who's relayed it to Voyager 2. Voyager 2 has sent us back a billionth of a trillionth of a watt. NASA has converted it back to a speech sound so that we can hear it, and it's currently being broadcast from Cape Canaveral. That's how you're hearing me right now.
Oh, right. By the way, I need to, sorry to interrupt, I need to make a short statement, because earlier, a few hangouts ago, when Nathan Oakley came on, oh no, he didn't come on, but there was this argument about radio in vacuum, and I made a mistake there. Yeah, I made a mistake. It happens, because I was assuming that radio was actually sound waves, and yeah, sound has to propel through matter, and thus it can definitely not propel itself through a vacuum no matter what you do. But apparently radio waves are not sound-based. They are electromagnetic radiation in a specific spectrum, and that can actually move through a vacuum. It will diminish over distance, though, as typical magnetic and electrical effects do. But yeah, it can actually move through a vacuum. So yeah, the earlier statement I made a few hangouts ago, that was incorrect, and I'm correcting it right now. Radio signals can move through a vacuum.
So does that mean that you're self-slapping yourself, Arwin?
No, I'm correcting myself.
Ah,
okay,
excellent.
well, I'll slap you for
Not
you
to
then.
gloat, sorry, Anthony. So at the time, Arwin, we had a little argument. I can't remember if it was on or offline, but in essence, you were saying, I want to smash the technology that they use, that they measure in the vacuum of space. And I said, no, I just want to smash the medium itself, because then you, ipso facto, debunk everything to do with that medium.
You're right.
Thank you.
You're right. Yeah. No, I was mistaken. I just, it happens sometimes, you know. But yeah, that's why I'm correcting it, because the truth is what matters most. And hey, anyone can make a mistake. Sometimes when I get into, just peer into a new thing, and I think, hey, look, I'm spotting something new. And yeah, I could just be misinterpreting it. So I'm always trying to, I'm not going to forget what I did. And I'm just going to figure out, like, yeah, was I right? Was every assumption that I based the new conclusion on, the new thing I spotted, was that right? And yeah, in concerning the radio signal, I was wrong, because I misinterpreted what radio signals actually are. So I'm correcting that. And in that sense, yeah, the whole vacuum is in that case a lot more effective argument. The vacuum of space.
I completely agree. But then I would. But John's on the panel, and I've got most of my arguments in this regard from John. You know, all credit where credit's due.
Right.
I think John's following.
Loving the taste of a humble pie. Mm.
What?
Was that a Wookiee impression or something? What was that all about?
Yeah, something like that. It was
That's a Wookiee impression.
So back to housekeeping for a sec. We'll finish this off.
This is the never-ending housekeeping show.
Channel, go on. Pardon?
The never-ending housekeeping show.
Yeah. So, Conspiracy Cat's video is based on a correlation that he claimed is real world, but doesn't address in any way how the effect of the Tor vacuum is affecting the atmosphere at the upper levels, because there is a huge differential, and he never mentioned it at all. It's not a little differential, it's massive. There is a big difference between the Tor value of the vacuum of space compared to the atmospheric PSI of 14 PSI. It's a huge differential there, and you can't have it. Can't have a huge differential in an open environment. The only thing you can have in an open environment or an open system would be pockets of minuscule variations of density, of pressure, of temperature, of humidity. And obviously that would all be affected by the sun. But you can't have huge differentials, which is what we do have, because we don't live in an open system. We're told we live in an open system. That's why George couldn't get it out yesterday and was literally while Nathan slapped him silly continuously over and over and over and over again, and he still wouldn't admit that we live, according to science, in an open system.
That
But
was
actually,
pathetic. Yeah, that was absolutely pathetic. That was like really, really sad.
yeah, because he doesn't want, and literally the amount of times he said in the background that it depends on the problem that you're trying to answer. No, George, it doesn't. If we live in an open system, it's always an open system. It doesn't depend on the problem. It's always open. So you can't change the goalposts to suit your argument.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
If he just believes that it is an open system, then he should just say so. And then, he can always think up some kind of scientism reason why that's possible. But to not answer the question is just outright pathetic. It's almost an admission of foreknowledge that it is not possible. It's weaselly. It's pathetic.
So George equating the refusal to answer the question is basically moronic, if want for a better word, because that is the current science. You can look it up everywhere. It all says in all of the literature, on all of any citation that you find, that according to the heliocentric model, we live in an open system. It doesn't work very well for the Coriolis force, does it, George? No. And he knows this. Or he got
not moronic, it's weaselly.
No, it's moronic. He's a moron. He knows the system, but he also knows that he's cornered. So he pretended, he would rather pretend to everybody that he's dumb than admit the point.
I did actually ask Conspiracy Cats in his comment, what about entropy? Paraphrasing, but yeah, and he said, I didn't read it, but you informed me that he'd replied almost immediately, and I can't remember what he said his reply was, something like he'll get back to it, or he will actually cover this at some stage.
Yeah, he just wanted to poke fun at Del beyond the imaginary curve for the bulk of the video, so he didn't really go into it too much. I think he just wanted to highlight some of the ignorances that he perceives that Del had. So he wanted to fire some bullets.
Okay.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem with doing that is that it causes a consequence. And when it comes to that pressurized system existing next to a vacuum, he is basing his maths all on, well, a correlation, effectively. It's the perceived relationship between two states. It's not real world. It's a pretty graph. They're just so story in science, but no evidence to support it. Just
you mean the Coriolis effect, right?
No,
right.
It was to do with that that formula that he used, which was really quite impressive. I mean, I've never come across it before. I've never heard of it before, so I had to go and do a little bit of reading. But he's applying this thing called the Boltzmann factor or the Boltzmann formula, but it cross-references in numerous applications in real world, and obviously it doesn't apply. And the reason why it doesn't apply is because if it does apply, it makes a pseudoscience answer. So even if it does, even if you can argue that it does apply, you're not getting the real world. You're just getting the probability of one state relative to the probability of the other state, and you're going to get a line. But that's not empirical. It's not real. It's based on
No,
probability.
it's not proven. It's proof still requires proof. So
Correct.
yeah, once you have proof as your foundations, then the Boltzmann factor could assist into making a more simple, a more logical foundation, as would Occam's razor. But yeah, you'll still need that proof if it's still based on presuppositions, if it's still based on unprovable things. Yeah, it may feel much more logic. You could think it out much easier, but it's still not proven.
Well, he talked about this, how the atmosphere is exactly the way we would expect it if we lived on a sphere. And I was like, how do you work that out when we have a pressure density gradient, right? We don't just have a pressure gradient; it's a pressure density gradient. And he was applying pure pressure alone, and I'm like, well, that's also exactly what you would expect to see. It all comes down to the curvature. Is there a curvature there for a sphere, or is there not? So what it comes back to, where's that R?
No,
Where's
but
the R?
that entire statement that you just mentioned, that is such a huge presupposition. It's like saying, yeah, the world is a sphere because everything is exactly as it would be on a sphere. That is literally just saying, yeah, the world is as it is because it's a sphere.
Yeah.
That's the most massive presupposition I could have ever imagined.
Well, for applying that,
Like everything is because it is because the world is a sphere.
well, for applying that Boltzmann factor, consider yourself bitch slapped, because it is the probability of one state relative to the probability of the other state, and that's not real. That isn't real. That's literally in a perfect world, in an ideal scenario,
Hello, hello.
Hi,
in a
Jimbo.
presupposition state. Now, I also heard something that piqued my interest the other day whilst I was out walking the dogs. Somebody was complaining that Scientific American wasn't credible enough for a citation when it came to snapping the wand of Newtonian gravity.
This is Scientific American, right?
Scientific American, yeah, the journal reference for the snapping the wand thing that they didn't like. Well, isn't it funny how when they don't like a citation, they will discredit it immediately, but when it suits them, they will apply it no matter what. And in this case, I'm going to read the opening line for what it says for the description for Scientific American on my favorite ball earther citation site, Wikipedia. And I quote, and this is what you do when you read from a document, Jimmy. You read it word for word. Quote, Scientific American, abbreviated as SciAm, often SA, is an American popular science magazine. Many famous scientists, including Albert Einstein, according to this citation, have contributed articles to it. Yet you guys don't want to accept it because it just destroys your arguments for Cavendish. Bottom line is, Cavendish experiment has been replaced in terms of gravity by the bending of space-time. And we all know that you can't prove the bending of space-time to show this attractive force between masses, because that's what you've got to do.
I'm kind of wondering now, how can you replace a so-called proven fact through experiment with a theory? Did they actually think up an experiment, basically, or a pseudoscience level fakery experiment to actually back that theory up? Because it sounds really weird to just discard something that's been so-called scientifically proven with a theory that has no proof. It sounds really, really bizarre that they would do that.
Well, that seems to be what they've done anyway. But bottom line is they can't reject Scientific America when it suits, because Albert Einstein himself has contributed according to the citation on Wikipedia. So if that's wrong, somebody go and change it, because it's credible on the face of it.
Hey, Anthony, what's up? I just got back.
Where have you been?
Well, I had to brush the cat and feed my teeth.
Hey, George. Good to have you again.
As long as you didn't feed the cat and brush your teeth.
Oh,
Hello.
God. Yeah,
I'd like to, if I can, while there's a quick lull, introduce a real quick idea for later, maybe not for discussion right now, but a thing called vapor pressure. When water evaporates into the air, it puts a lot of mass in the air, and it exerts a force and transfers a lot of energy. And it's a real factor, because air pressure is one thing, vapor pressure is another thing. So just someday maybe we'll add that to the pressure conversations.
Vapor pressure, water vapor dissolves in air, right? And if the temperature is sufficient enough, and then if the temperature
there's a
is...
saturation.
Come on,
relative,
Arwen.
yes.
Gas.
I'm asking a
Vapor
question.
pressure doesn't
I can't
dissolve
finish the
in
question,
air.
right?
It's a molecule.
Hey,
that's
George, do we live
I'm
in a-
talking about dissolving.
Can you
Things
just
can
no
dissolve.
need
not-
to raise
no,
your voice.
no,
Hold on.
you don't
Just one.
dissolve
Hold on.
it.
One at
Oh,
a
really?
time.
So salt doesn't
Dissolve in
dissolve in water?
solution.
It doesn't? It
It's
doesn't
called
become part
vapor
of
in
the
the
One at
air.
a time.
because
Hold on.
suspended
Stop.
amongst the
Everyone,
air
stop.
on
Stop. Stop. Stop.
vapor.
Stop. Stop.
Anyway, I'd
Stop.
like to
Just
talk
one
to
at a time.
Anthony Riley about open and closed systems, and also a subject about moment arms.
I'm hoping that we're going to talk about open and closed systems. What type of system do we live in, George, on the Earth that we're supposed to live on?
Again, let me ask you a question.
You're very interruptive. I was actually having a small conversation. Couldn't you?
All
just
right,
wait?
continue with your conversation. When you're ready, I'll discuss open and closed systems and moment arms with
Right. So
Riley.
because I thought that this was an interesting concept here. That
You can't discuss
that
open
Jimbo-
and closed systems. Maybe if we have, how can you open a
Can
paper
you
bag
please
unassisted?
wait?
George, you friggin' clown.
Okay.
We're
Can
gonna
you
deal with you
please
here.
wait,
Okay, hold on,
John?
let's just
I was
let
still trying to
Arwen's-
finish the conversation.
Arwen's battered his way in. Just let him. He's waiting to get his end of his statement in. Just let him.
Yeah, Jimbo, I thought it was a very interesting thing you brought up. So, would you agree that water vapor, if the temperature is sufficient enough for it not to turn back into water droplets, that it dissolves in the air?
Well, they still insist on using the term vapor, so I don't really think it's truly dissolved. And what I think it does, again, it adds a lot of mass to the regular air, if you will. It contains heat, heat rises, so it goes up. You know, it creates a higher pressure, evaporating water, and it rises. As it rises, it releases the heat, lowers the pressure again, and rains.
But if
It's
gonna
a very
give weight-
elastic type of cycle.
But if it's gonna give weight to the air, then how would it not dissolve? Then there would be a separation, like oil and water.
Yeah, you know,
but
there's
would you
certainly
see
an
that?
ionic thing in steam and evaporation and stuff. But,
Yeah, but
the
how could you not
important thing
see
is
it?
the amount of mass that it adds to the air, and that, you know, a gallon of water evaporated into the air, that's 10 pounds of water into the air.
Yeah.
And
Of
we have
course.
billions of square miles every day that evaporate off the surfaces of
Yeah, but if it's not gonna dissolve in the air, then you would see it, just like oil in water. No matter how much you shake it, it's never gonna be one thing.
no, you know,
You're gonna
it-
see the droplets.
like they're temporarily dissociated from their solid form or their fluid form, and they recombine to form fluid later again, a smaller form, a more compact form.
But it doesn't always do that. It only
Well, water is a
when the
cycle,
temperature
of
is
course.
correct for it.
Well,
Because
it's
there can
always
be
changing.
clear- Please. There
Sorry.
can be clear blue skies. Let's say there's no chemtrails happening. Clear blue skies that have a lot of moist in it.
Absolutely.
And then
Well,
only when it cools down, suddenly the
Not
clouds start
cool.
forming. But
Pressure
until that time,
decreases.
there's a lot of water in
Yeah.
the clear sky that you
understand.
can absolutely not see. So it must be dissolved in the air
Well,
in that current state.
The temperature can precipitate water out, but so can reducing the pressure. And again, losing heat
Of course.
causes condensation, a reduction in pressure. They're interrelated. You can't, I don't see how you can actually separate the temperature and the volume, because they're elastic with each other. They have a constant of proportionality. The
But
relative humidity of water in the air, or the amount it can hold, is dependent not only on temperature, but also on pressure.
I get that. I'm not denying any of that. I'm simply trying to say that vaporized water, if the temperature and pressure is right, in the right conditions, that it actually does dissolve in that current state in air.
Yes,
until
water-
until those conditions change and it starts to suddenly become water droplets again. That is basically all.
If you give it enough energy, the water will dissociate into its elements and become explosive.
Energy. Right.
Yeah, if they
I
get
would
enough
say
thermal
pressure,
energy,
temperature.
water will
The
dissociate.
temperature, you have to actually detract, because yeah, when the temperature lowers, that is when the water droplets will start to form or even start to
Or
turn
the
into hail,
pressure.
and the pressure has to be less, I think.
Well, if you
So
drop
you
the
have to actually
pressure,
take
it
energy
can hold
away
less
for being
water.
able to make it into a liquid again.
Yep.
So I think you got that turned around. But
To
anyway,
release the heat, or either way, yeah. They're so closely related. I have a hard time separating, the heat loss from the volumic loss of, and the saturation, what air can hold at certain pressures, how much water it can hold.
yep.
So
But
yeah, it can rain out because of temperature, or it can rain out because of a decrease in the air pressure.
right. I just wanted to like get into this a little bit, that just like things can dissolve in water, and that's like an official terminology, things can also dissolve into gas if there
Yeah.
is a way for it to combine itself, and then you will not see it.
But we know that
And some
clouds
gases
are
might
water.
repel each other, so you will always see them, even if they are in the same room. You will always see the separation. But some gases or some states of water can dissolve in air. That's
Sorry,
just
sorry to interrupt, guys. Sorry to
tons
interrupt.
and tons of
Sorry.
weight
Bear
or
with me a
mass
second, Jimbo.
Yeah.
that can
Sorry, Jimbo. Bear with me
go
just one sec.
in and out. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's move on to
hold on. Sorry, Arwin. You're both in agreement on that point, but George is literally chomping at the bit in the chat, disagreeing with you. So I'm more than happy for George to challenge you, because you're both in agreement on this point. George, you there?
Yeah, Arwin seems to be thoroughly mixed up here. Dissolving and precipitating out of solution are not the same thing. Gas do not dissolve liquids or water or anything like that. You can have water vapors being suspended within a gas. Gases don't dissolve. Things dissolve into solution. Liquids, that is not a concept or a term that we associate with gases, Arwin. Yeah, you really need to go and
then. So what terminology?
You're using the term improperly.
So what terminology do you use for that same concept, but with gases? Because English is not my first language, okay? So
I said, what you mean as far as having water vapor being suspended within the air and the molecules of the atmosphere?
Yeah, but it's not just suspended.
Yes, it is.
No, you can't. You can't see it. It is basically mixing up.
That's not water vapor.
Just like dissolving things.
You cannot see. You can see water vapor. You cannot see steam. People are wrong, mixed up about that terminology. Steam is an invisible gas, whereas water vapor is steam that has started to precipitate out, and you have very small droplets of water. That's what we see as mist and water vapor. That's different. It's not a gas. It's very small droplets of water that are suspended within the atmosphere. They have a lot of, to use your term, buoyancy. They can be suspended within the air. That's very small droplets of water. We call that vapor.
I don't know. I think maybe.
Oh, you don't know. I know you don't know. That's why you need to go and study the subject.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't be an ass.
No, I'm telling you, you don't know. You don't understand these things.
And not buoyancy.
You tend to talk about things and make declarations of things you know nothing about, just like you do about radio waves.
Hold on. No. Stop. Wait. You've got to the point where you've got to the conclusion. George has made his point. Then you've called him an ass or something, which was unnecessary. Obviously, that's going to spark into a row. You know, Jimbo's got a different point. If this is going to continue, it might as well be Jimbo with a contrary opinion to what George has just said. No offense, Arwin, but rather than it being an ad hominem between the two of you.
He said that the water in the air is a thing of density, and it's actually saturation, and often we call it the relative humidity. Water in the air is not all droplets. It's actually suspended in almost molecular form. Like if it's 55% relative humidity in the air, you can't feel or taste the water.
Yeah.
You can't lick it off the walls, but it's there.
That's my point. If it's
Yes,
warm
it's
enough,
suspended within the air. It's not
And
dissolved. in the
water
air.
has a property,
suspended.
whether it's in liquid form or evaporated in the air. Water
Yeah, what's your
always
point?
has 7% free hydronium.
No.
Yes, it does. What's the
no,
pH
not
of
7.
water?
Hey, wait a minute.
Buddy,
You
what
wanna
is
know
the
what free
pH
hydronium
scale?
is? Look at when you
Per
take pure.
hydronium ion free in
Jimbo,
water.
come on,
It's
Jimbo.
7%.
I'm going to
Jimbo,
explain it to you.
hold on.
You just can't hear anything. Just
explain it
Jimbo,
to
just
you.
let him respond.
All right. If you have pure water, okay, it has a pH of 7. What do we mean by pH? You know what pH means? It's power of hydrogen. That's the hydrogen
No, it's
ion.
per hydronium ion.
No, it
Per
means power.
hydronium.
No, go look it up. It means power of hydrogen. It's the exponent. It's the negative of the exponent of the hydrogen ions of the hydrogen ion concentration. You have hydronium ions, you have hydrogen ions. Now, when you have pure water at room temperature, a certain amount of the water molecules dissociate to give you free hydronium. It's about 1 molecule in every 55 million
It's
molecules
7%.
of water. It's not
It is
7%. You
7%
realize
free
what the
hydronium.
concentration of 7% is?
A
It's
lot.
incredible. pH of 7 means the
Neutral.
concentration of the hydronium and the hydrogen ions are balanced. They have an exchange going back and forth. And
It's
the
actually the
concentration,
hydronium and the hydroxyl ions. Get it
and
clear.
the
Get it straight.
concentration
You're getting
is
old.
10 to the minus 7th. 10 to the minus 7th, a tenth of a million. That in terms of percentage, let's see, 10 to the minus 7th times 12, that's a percentage of 1/100th of 1,000%, not 7%, dude. Go look it up.
So vinegar is in the thousands of a percent of free acid.
Depends on what you want to
5%
talk about in
acetic
terms of
acid.
acidic concentration. Our
free
water
ion?
here, our lake
What you're
water,
talking
because
about is
because of the carbon in the atmosphere,
we
carbon.
can agree that neutral water has a pH, a
Hey,
per
B.
hydronium free factor of 7. Whether
That
it's
means-
7% or 7
No, it's not
thousandths or
7%. No.
it's 7. The number is 7. They don't say
Yes,
percent.
but you
They
have to
don't say
understand what
anything.
the
No.
7 means. The
The
7 is
scale
the
is
exponent
very
of the
clear. It
concentration.
goes
It's the
from
power
1
of
to
10
14 and
exponent.
7 is neutral, right in the middle. Right in the middle. Any
Yeah.
shift in base or alkalinity or acidity shifts that from 7 up or down
Yes,
that
but you don't
scale.
understand what the number
Free
means.
hydrogen
You call
that
it
is
percent.
registered or free
pH is
hydroxyl
not-
that is
Look at,
registered.
look at, dude. Percentage. The pH number is not a percentage. It's the exponent on the power of 10 of the concentration.
Free ion is what we're talking about, not exponential numbers. Numbers don't
Yes, we are.
exist in water.
Oh
Water
my
exists in water. You can't find your numbers in water.
Yeah, you express the
pH
concentration.
represents the free hydronium, not a number. That's what that represents. Free hydroxyl, when there's an excess of hydroxyl ion,
Google
OH,
says it stands for
alkali.
potential hydrogen.
and if the pH, the per hydronium ion level is
All right, take care.
less acid.
I mean, I've got a reference that says it.
Okay,
Back
I'm
to
back.
George. Sorry, just one second. I'm just going to read this little article. Where's the bit? The H in pH stands for hydrogen, but there is some controversy as to what the P represents.
It stands for power. It's power of hydrogen. That's what pH means. And the H means the concentration of the hydrogen. It's the power of hydrogen. Power as an exponent. The power on the hydrogen ion concentration. 10 to some power. That's what the power means.
So in hydrogen peroxide, it means the same thing.
No.
Per.
Oh, God.
So yeah, that's exactly what the citation says. So the Carlsberg Foundation itself says pH means power of hydrogen. However, chemists claim it stands for potenzo, also meaning power. So both back George. Sorry.
power of hydrogen. That's what we mean by pH. Capital
Well,
P.
it's free
little-
acid in the water, basically. Free hydrogen
Free hydrogen.
is acid. Free
That's what I
hydrogen
just been
in the water.
telling you. That's what
It's a
I've
radical.
been telling you.
It's active. It can do things chemically.
Oh God, it's an ion.
So yeah, it's lowercase p,
Exactly.
capital H. This is the pH. I mean, obviously there's going to be other things that are abbreviated with pH, but in this instance it's lowercase p, uppercase H.
That's right. pH, power of hydrogen. It's the exponent or the power on the power of 10 that is associated with the ion concentration in water. We express concentrations as powers of 10. 10 to the minus 3 is a pH of 3. 10 to the minus 13 is a pH of 13. Very basic. pH numbers lower than 7 tell you have an acidic solution where you have more hydrogen ions than you have hydroxyl ions, hydronium. And a pH number greater than 7 tells you that the solution is basic. pH numbers go from 0 to 14.
This looks like a job for PH Mars.
But isn't that backing what Jimbo said? Because that was exactly what Jimbo said about the number scale, George.
So
if you also check out the definition of hydronium alone, even a wiki definition of it, and look at other products that have like hydrogen peroxide, okay? In that instance, the per means 1 oxygen per hydrogen.
it has nothing to do with pH.
Well, why do they call it peroxide?
God. The P
It's
per
1
oxide
per
does not
per.
mean power.
Free radical, free extra, whatever.
It's
per.
a name that we give. You know what the
Per means 1 for 1, or in this case,
No,
hydrogen peroxide. There's 1 hydrogen for 1 oxygen, hydrogen peroxide, and the percent is marked on the bottle. 3% usually for home use, up to 30% for industrial.
yeah,
I
and
wouldn't know what
what's
I'm
your
talking
point
about,
here?
though.
So what's your
My point is, we're talking about hydrogen as a free radical. It's not attached to the OH in the water when it's a free radical. They're separate, both
Yeah,
in
well,
liquid
what
form
happens? I
and
just
when they're in the
told you.
vapor in
Okay,
the air.
I just
Hold
told
on,
you
Active
that
sorry,
radical,
George.
chemical,
Can I just
and
hear
it's
the...
happy to mix with other stuff.
Sorry,
It
Jimbo,
adds
can you start
tremendous
again? Can you
weight
repeat
to
that?
the
I didn't
air.
hear
I
the
just
majority.
told you that when you
George,
have
George,
pure water,
George,
have
George,
room-
George.
Okay.
I just want. I
What?
didn't actually hear what Jimbo said because you started talking over him. He got to this free radicals
Go
and
ahead.
saying it's separate, and I didn't hear the rest.
Well, free radicals are chemical agents that, like acids, they can react with anything. They can eat iron. They can do things that acids do. That's why, like, you know, some people think oxygen is eating iron and rusting everything. Actually, just water can do it. It's the
So
free
what's your
ion,
point?
the
I don't
acid
see where you.
radical.
What
Well, the
what's your
point
path?
is, I started off with vapor pressure and including water and the fact that it evaporates and it's massively heavy and that it causes our environment to have motion and all these eddy currents and all this weather. And it's never added in these pressure conversations. We're always talking about air pressure at the foot of Mount Everest and at the top of Mount Everest and all kinds of stuff like that. And the importance of the water and its exchange and pressure and temperature and everything is never even considered. And it's
Sure,
massively
it is. It all
important.
contributes. It all contributes. Of course, it's considered. When you have a
Not at
barometer,
all.
when you have a barometer, it registers the pressure, whether it be due to the oxygen and the nitrogen and the water molecules being suspended in there. It all contributes to the pressure. It doesn't get parsed out.
Fair enough.
But it's
So
variation in pressures and temperatures that causes these motions and these differences in pressures. at
Yeah,
different
and
layers
thermals.
levels.
Yeah, how much kinetic energy the molecules have, the thermals that's associated with them. You can have air masses that have different average temperatures than others. That's what gives rise to air movement and winds. I mean, cold fronts, warm fronts, all that is pressure differentials due to thermal masses, due to thermal temperature differences in these air masses.
So at this point, George, because we're now talking about pressure, we still have an open question from Anthony about whether or not open or closed system applies to Earth. Obviously, we've got
Okay.
pressure.
All right. Hey, Anthony, let me ask you this. If you have a thermos...
Sorry, not you ask him something. He asked you something and has now waited patiently, George. So hopefully you'll shut up long enough for Anthony to actually ask his question to you without you starting off with a question. It was the same question I asked you yesterday, but
I'm not going to answer it until I have an understanding whether or not Anthony knows what these terms mean.
Why does knowing terms mean anything to you?
Oh, you're very quiet,
Well, it
Anthony.
means everything as far as understanding what open and closed related to the Earth means.
Sorry,
no, I understand the concept of open and closed.
No, you don't. I don't think you do.
If you can launch a rocket and go right into the vacuum.
No, Jimbo. Just let it be Anthony and George. Come on.
Okay, Anthony. Okay. You have a thermos. You put hot coffee in it. You close the thermos. Is the coffee inside the thermos, that environment, is that an open or closed system?
Closed.
Okay. Why is it closed?
Because it's got 4 walls, a ceiling, a roof, a bottom.
No, it has nothing to do with container.
It's contained, George.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
The opposite of open.
Oh, God. Okay, let me explain to you. What a closed system means is that a system can be considered as not having an exchange of mass between it and its environment. Hence, you have a thermos, you put warm water in it, coffee or whatever, you close it off. There is no mass exchange between it and the air outside the thermos. That is what we call a closed system. Okay.
So what?
Well,
It could be an
okay,
energy
now,
exchange.
and for over a short period of time, it can be considered a closed system thermally because over, say, a period of minutes, the temperature inside that thermos is not changing much or hardly at all. So it's a closed system. However, let that thermos sit out, say, for 2 days. Is the temperature inside going to change?
Sure.
Yeah, of course it will. So it's not a closed system.
How could it ever be?
Over that time period, it is now an open system because yes, there is. There has been a temperature drop. If it were a Anthony, if it was a closed system, that temperature would have never changed.
On what base? So you're saying that because of the temperature change over time?
I'm saying it depends on the problem at hand. If you look at it over, listen a minute. If you look at that thermos over a short period of time, you can consider it to be a closed system because there isn't any thermal change, no temperature change of the liquid inside that thermos. But if you consider it, say, over a period of days, there is thermal leakage. There is an exchange of temperature, of energy from the inside, the closed system, to the outside environment. So now it looks like an open system because the temperature inside the thermos has changed, and it is changing.
George, you've got mixed up between isolated and closed
Hold on,
systems.
Rumpus. I was about to introduce
I'm not
you.
talking isolated.
There was a two-way conversation going on, Rumpus. Just hello, good to have you.
I'm only here very temporarily. Would you mind presenting a definition on screen so that we can all see a definition of a closed system? Let's get one on screen.
A closed system is allowed to have thermal
Rumpus,
exchange with
he's
its
talking
environment.
to George.
Did you hear that, George?
Go ahead, George.
So what? I'm sorry, I was reading something else. What?
Can you present on screen your definition of closed system for everybody to see, please?
Well, I'm not going into definition. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, we are, because you've brought up. You said the definition was the exchange of particles.
I'm not going to do scripts. I'm not going to do share screens because every time I do something like that, Nathan goes ballistic on me.
Right. Well, not Ranty.
Well, you got Soundly in the background feeding you, right? Is that why? You freaking clown.
Well,
hey Nathan, let's do that presentation, man. Let's expose.
Hold on, John. Hold on.
All I want to do is get a definition for
about 5 minutes. Hold on, Anthony. Hold on. We've got about 5 minutes left. I just want this back and forth. We've got to the point where we're talking about open and closed, and George is saying, "I don't want to give a definition."
No, I'm not saying I don't want to give a definition.
Excellent. Can you give us a definition of an open and closed system, please? Can you just cite it, please, George, rather than just give your interpretation of it? Just give us a citation for it, if you don't mind. That would be brilliant. Thank you very much, George.
But there is an energy
Come
exchange,
on, come on.
like,
We've got
You
5
are
minutes
allowed
left.
to have an energy exchange in a closed
No,
system.
Rumpus. Just Rumpus. All I want is a definition from George of what he thinks an open system is.
No, he's clearly not going to do it. So let me do it on his behalf.
No, Anthony. Hold on. No. Don't bring it up. No. George, why won't you bring up... Sorry, George, you just want a quick question.
I don't need to. I'm telling you what the definition is.
I haven't asked my question yet.
Of an open system
George, I haven't asked my question. George, control yourself.
Stop rumping in the damn hangout, George.
Stop rumpusing the hangout. Thank you. I hadn't answered my question. So, why... I waited for a gap. Why will you not present a definition in a debate?
I am presenting it to you. I'm telling you what the definition is.
I don't accept that, George. I'll present it on your behalf, and you can tell me, do you accept the definition that I'm presenting? Because I asked you to do it, and you chose not to.
Yeah, Nathan, we did this yesterday. Sorry, Anthony. We did this yesterday, and he said, Anthony got it, so I won't accept it. So I want to know why, not only will he not present... George, I haven't finished. Why, not only will he not present a definition, why he automatically rejects any that are presented to him.
I just said that. A closed system is a physical system that doesn't exchange any matter with its surroundings. I just said that.
Can you get
sorry,
in
which
Anthony,
you don't have
Anthony,
an exchange of matter with its environment.
Can you show us that as George, a citation? Anthony, God, I'm trying to keep control here and you're making matters worse. Why won't you give us a citation for it?
George is correct in that definition.
Just Rumpus, stop it.
Shut up.
No. John, no need. Right.
Well, why can't we move on?
Because I want to know my question specifically, George. George, you've asked a question. You just asked me a question, George. Now you're rumpusing the hangout. Why can't we just continue? Because in a debate, definitions are important. You have to define your terms. So that's what we're asking you to do. Hold on, George. I hadn't quite finished. I don't get it. Why you're so rude? No need. Why won't you define terms for us with citations?
I did.
No, you didn't provide a citation.
I don't need to provide a citation when I have a very good understanding of what these things are.
George, I called for one. That means you do.
You brought one up. I agree with your citation. Move on.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Right.
No problem. Anthony, I'll stick you up.
Right. So it reads, quote, and this is what you do. You quote it verbatim. It says, in a non-relativistic classical mechanics, a closed system is a physical system that doesn't exchange any matter with its surroundings. Okay?
Right.
So in the case of a thermos, what's the matter that would be exchanging with its surroundings over time that would qualify it to be open?
The liquid.
No liquid's exchanging, it's sealed.
I said that's what it would have to exchange to be open. In terms of the liquid, in terms of the matter inside the thermos, it is a closed.
Anthony, wait. Anthony, you've leveled to McCann. Just let him respond.
No, he's not. He's changing. He's moving.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Let him do that.
What he actually said was,
Anthony, for the love of God, just be quiet. If he's going to change what he said, let him.
I agree with that. As far as the liquid and the matter inside the container is considered, if we focus on that problem alone, it is a closed system. If you talk about energy exchange, which is different.
Hold on, George. Sorry, it doesn't qualify. The thermos. George, you said you agreed with this definition, George. George, you're rumpusing the hangout again. You said you agreed with this. You said you agreed. George, please, George. You said you agreed with this definition. George.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't need to give me permission to talk on my own show. Thank you, George. You agreed this was a decent definition. According to this definition, the thermos does not qualify as a closed system.
As an open system.
It's a closed system.
Right.
No.
Let me say what I want to say.
No, sorry,
Before
Anthony.
George.
Hold on. I just
Right.
want, if I'm wrong, hold on. If I'm wrong, if it is transferring energy, it is an open system.
No, a close.
Nathan,
Oh, who's talking
Hold
to
on,
you,
Rumpus.
Rumpus?
Hold on, Rumpus.
Can I give a comment? I haven't
No.
commented yet.
No,
Can I just
Nathan.
explain
No, you
this?
can't.
Really
Nathan.
easily.
No.
Nathan.
Really, in 10 seconds,
Not
I can
yet.
sort
No,
this
you
out.
can't. If you don't
In
shut up,
10
you will get
seconds, I can
kicked.
sort this out.
No.
If you don't shut up,
In 10
Rumpus, you will be
seconds, I can
booted.
sort this all out.
One last
Unbelievable.
chance.
It's
Right, I'm going
fine,
to mute you
Rumpus.
so you
Can I
can hear
give
me.
10-second
Rumpus,
explanation?
Rumpus, you will get one last chance to keep your mouth shut, and then you will get kicked.
Can I respond, Nathan, please?
Yes.
George said that over a long period of time, a few days, that a thermos could be considered to be an open system because
Exactly.
of the
what he
change
said.
in temperature. Now, my question is, according to the definition, it needs to exchange matter, not temperature. Thermal wouldn't count. Exchange matter, that's physical. So unless you can demonstrate how a thermos exchanges matter with its surroundings over a period of days, it can't qualify as an open system, George. Do you
Come on,
understand what my point
George.
was?
No, look at Anthony. All right, let's dial it back here. Let's just
Yeah,
look at no,
John, John.
Forget about. Hey, John, will you shut the fuck up?
No
I'm so
swearing.
tired of
Come
your
on.
nonsense.
Just everybody take a step back. We've got a couple of minutes left on this stream before we take a break. Let's just get to a conclusion, George.
All right. Let's just talk about the Earth, okay? That's where
No, we are specifically talking about open and closed systems. We've been doing it for 2 days. Now I am not going to change the subject just because you've got on the ropes.
No,
Yo,
I'm
closed system has
P,
different definitions.
P, come on,
depending
please,
whether you're
P,
talking about like
please,
classical
please.
mechanics, thermodynamics,
P,
or quantum physics.
P, we don't need it.
Jeez, old man.
So, George,
Well, I'll tell you what. Since you're going to close down in a few minutes, we're not going to get this resolved right now. I'll wait until the next show. I'll join, and then I will go and I'll find you some citations.
My point's concluded. You said that the change in temperature.
Look it. Give me a chance.
George,
to find
shut up.
citations for it.
George, you said you wanted to back down. Now, I am giving
No, I'm
someone
not
else
backing
permission
down.
to
I'm saying
talk.
Just give me an opportunity to find the citations. I
Off
wasn't
you go.
going to go and
Off you go. Go and find your citation in silence.
So whilst he's finding his citation, let me just clarify specifically what he's looking for. George said that the change in temperature over time would allow this to satisfy the definition of an open system. And my question is that matter for the purposes of this definition? Because temperature is not matter.
Exactly. So he's a crayon muncher, right? He doesn't know what a closed system is. He doesn't know what an open system is. He doesn't know what an isolated system is. He's a crayon muncher.
It does vary, actually. I'm going to retract what I said. It varies. You can have a closed system that does not exchange thermal energy into some that do. It's variable. This is the confusion.
That's what I was trying to say. Like
you're actually correct.
I'm trying to say all along. It depends on the problem that you are considering.
Oh, man.
The heliocentric model doesn't change depending on the problem.
Well, I can get there if Nathan will let me. Let's forget about the thermos and just talk about the Earth a moment.
Oh, let's forget about the thermos.
I do,
train,
John.
right,
Sorry,
George?
John. I'm really sorry. Right, I do want that as an ending question because I asked it so many times yesterday. So we've gone through the definitions of open and closed. Now I'd like to know if Earth is open or closed, George.
Okay. Consider prior to the space.
Yes or no?
John, will you shut the fuck up?
No swearing,
no,
George. I don't want
crayon
George. I don't want to have to kick you out just for swearing. Come on.
Okay, I won't. But will you silence him so I can say my piece?
I will. John, I just want him to get.
on
Hold on, George. I've got to now silence you, haven't I? So if John could be kind enough to just let George give an answer to my question, is Earth open?
In some instances, it can be considered open. Just let me say my piece here.
No, that's not a concise answer. Is Earth open is a closed question that requires a yes or no answer. Earth cannot simultaneously be both open and closed. It must be one or the other.
If you give me a chance, I will show you how Earth can be both an open and closed system. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
Now, if you consider the Earth prior, say, to the space program, where you talk about the natural world, life on the earth, we can consider it a closed system. Plants, animals live and die. There's a atmosphere, there's life processes, there's a carbon cycle. Everything in terms of Anthony's definition is a closed system because there's no matter exchange, no mass exchange.
Okay,
with
sorry.
outside
Okay, thank you, George.
environment.
Thank you. I
No,
understand that
shut
now.
up and let me
George, thank
speak.
you. Thank you. I got what you said. That's brilliant. However, you're talking about the bottom, the base. So in order for it to be a closed system.
Again.
Yeah, so
Look.
we're talking about Earth.
So it's a closed system. Now,
George,
if you
George,
want
bear
to
with me.
start-
Bear with me, George. The reason for this question is because of the original question. How do we have gas pressure without a container? So I'm not interested in the flowers and plants. We're talking about the layer of gas pressure next to the vacuum. So in that instance, George, is it open or is it closed?
It's an open system because you can have the lighter elements like hydrogen and helium escape away from the Earth, never to return. So it's open.
It's open. So we have a considerably lower pressure system next to gas pressure, George. How is that possible, given that we do experience...
No, you don't.
I haven't
no,
quite
you
finished.
don't. You do not have a pressure differential like that, like you have in a tire, because as you get up to the upper reaches of the atmosphere, where you're, say, up around the Kármán line at 62 miles or so, well, it's well before that even. You get up about 20, 30 miles. The air is so thin up there, there's negligible pressure. It just feathers out.
Thank you, George.
Dissipates.
Thank you, George.
Pardon?
Thank you. So at the top, we have gas pressure at the top, correct?
Not much. It's very minimal. It's
Sorry,
like,
I didn't say how much.
-7.
That wasn't my question. So I want a yes or no answer. Let's see if I can get one. Do we have gas pressure at the top?
Very little.
That's not my question. I'll ask it a third time. Do we have gas pressure at the top?
At the very top, at the last top, no.
We don't have pressure at the top. So then there's no gas.
Not at the very last molecule. No, there is no pressure.
At that last molecule, George, that would be gas pressure, would it not?
No, there is no gas pressure there.
So
It has
where does the gas pressure start then, George? At the point we... Okay, let me rephrase my question. Let me rephrase my question, George. Don't rumpus the hangout, George. No need. I've just got a supplementary question. So, that layer gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. Eventually, you get to a point where you still do have gas pressure. That is a certainty.
Well, you always have it within the vacuum. There's no such thing as a void of space where there isn't any molecules. There's molecules everywhere in the universe.
That's fascinating. So at the top,
by that definition,
George.
Pressure is extremely small.
Right, we're at the top layer, the last layer, the one before space.
No such thing.
Excuse me. Sorry, we're at the top layer of gas pressure.
No such thing.
What are you talking about? I'm breathing it
Rumpus
right now,
is
George.
correct.
I'm breathing it now, Rumpus. Why am I now having this conversation with Rumpus?
There is no such thing. It just dissipates. It just becomes and merges with the vacuum of space, which isn't void.
The vacuum of
matter.
space,
There is
George.
matter in space.
George. Yeah, you've got a vacuum of space, haven't you? Yeah.
It's not a pure vacuum.
Right, that's it. Rumpus, you've got to go. You cannot contain yourself. Nobody is talking to you. Get
I've been
out.
speaking like crazy, I know.
No, get out. Nobody was talking to you. You're just rumpusing the hangout like you do. That's all you do.
You're going to slap anybody, Nathan.
Goodbye, Rumpus. So, George.
Go back to your crayons.
No, I just want to round this out. You've said vacuum of space. So according to you, we have vacuum of space, correct?
It's not a perfect vacuum, but that's what we mean by vacuum of space. There are some molecules of matter within the space. It's not a perfect vacuum.
Okay, so in terms of a vacuum chamber, yeah, one that we can have on Earth, is the vacuum of space more or less of a vacuum than a vacuum chamber?
The vacuum of space has less pressure than we can ever attain on Earth in a vacuum chamber.
So, in other words,
What
it
is
is even...
PSI?
Sorry, George. So it's even lower pressure than anybody's imagination of what a gas pressure chamber can achieve in terms of a vacuum. Correct?
Exponential magnitudes, Nathan.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
The PSI.
It's
That's
Tor,
where I went.
but don't worry, Arwin. So we've got a much lower pressure system, George. The
In deep
vacuum.
space. In deep space.
The vacuum.
Yes, in deep
Excuse
space.
me, George. You're
We do,
doing it
but
again
not-
like you did
not
yesterday.
within a few hundred
Yeah, I'm
miles
trying to
of
make.
the
Let's
Earth.
pop George on mute. Red rhetoric. This is why I have a mute button. When wankers like George here decide that they're going to talk all over me, I shut them up because I do want to be heard when I make my point, which is what George is talking all over. The point that demolishes your heliocentric religion. So, George, you will listen to me. You have a lower pressure system. Now, I'm definitely breathing gas pressure right now, and according to you, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. Now, eventually, you're going to have a top to that gas pressure. What I'm breathing, and I know I'm breathing it. How is it possible to have something pressing pressure on a lower pressure system, given that we have entropy?
Well, that's the fallacy. There is no top layer. There is no layer of pressure. It just feathers out. It gradually dissipates until you reach deep space, out a few hundred
Second law
miles.
of thermodynamics violation.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
I
is.
think actually just before I round out, I will hear John. Can you explain second law of thermodynamics just for George?
Yes, energy goes from a higher concentration to a lower concentration always. Higher pressure to lower pressure always. Those are basically the entropy laws. Now, what he's talking about here is pressure gradients. Where did you get gas pressure first? In an open system, please. Thank you.
It's because of the weight of the molecules on top of one another. You have more air molecules.
No.
Yes, you
Sorry, yeah, just going to say it again, George. We're talking about the top layer. The top layer with nothing on top of it, which you say doesn't exist and is a fallacy. But we do have a vacuum of space, according to you, and we do have gas pressure. I'm breathing it right now.
Well, that's the problem that you have here. There is no...
That's not my problem. That's your problem because it doesn't conform to your open system, George.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan.
No, you know what holds the molecule?
Yes, John, go ahead.
Question for George. If
I
you-
can't get anything in here. He's rumpusing.
Yeah, it's rumpusing it, yeah. That's what they do.
Nathan?
I do have... Hold on, Arwin.
Go on, John.
Remember I had a small presentation. Can we get to that in the second one?
Yeah, you can do it now if you like.
Do it now or the second one?
Well,
Can I
John
ask
is
a question
there.
first?
Maybe we can do a little sidebar here.
I will round out for a 10-minute break because it's just there's a lot of rumpusing going on, so it may be at the beginning of the next one, John, if that's goodbye everyone. So with that, I will say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate, and of course a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, then I'm sure you know exactly what to do, but if you like the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video. Oh, did you get smacked?
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!